So now it is my great pleasure to introduce the panel discussion. So Mary is going to stay with us for the panel discussion, and it's a pleasure to introduce the next two speakers. First of those is Chef Mark Picone, Chef Mark, as we lovingly refer to him around here. Mark began his career on his family's food retail boutique, which organically evolved to his career in education as a chef and as a vineyard proprietor. Mark currently teaches at the Canadian Food and Wine Institute at Niagara College, locally here. And he notes the engagement of students reinforces the role of mentorship. While maintaining his creative eye and with a pulse of Niagara's regional cuisine, the approach to sustainable farming led to his prized vineyard that is nestled in the Vinemount sub-appellation and parlays into his spirit of social gastronomy. Mark is a graduate of the University of Guelph, which is not far from where we are, and has his MBA from Niagara University, which is located in Niagara Falls, New York, just across the Niagara River from us. So welcome to you, Mark. And then lastly, but not leastly, Dr. Brad May is an adjunct professor with the Environmental Sustainability Research Center at Brock University here in St. Catharines, Ontario. He is presently a postdoctoral researcher with the federally funded MEOPAR project looking at shoreline vulnerability, resilience, and adaptation planning in the town of Lincoln in the Niagara region. And I should note, because we have such a broad audience from all over the world, that when Brad is talking about shoreline vulnerability here in Lincoln, it refers to Lake Ontario, which is one of the 5 Great Lakes here in Central North America. In 2018, he received his PhD from the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo, and his research interests are focused on leadership theory as it applies to community climate change adaptation. Prior to this, he was a program manager for the Adaptation and Impacts Research Division at Environment Canada. So welcome to you, Brad.
Thank you.
And Brad's here. I don't yet see Mark here, so hopefully we can get Mark in here shortly. Now, introducing the panel topic. So the themes for our discussion are youth and food security. And I'll just give a little preamble here, and then we'll start considering a few questions for the next 25 minutes or so for the panel. So in a recent study by the Canadian Agricultural Human Resources Council, research showed that there's not only a labor gap in the agricultural sector, but that this gap will widen exponentially. It will nearly double over the next 10 years due to the aging demographic of the current workforce here in Canada. In a recent statement made by the Premier of Ontario, Premier Doug Ford, he urged all Ontarians to become less reliant on imported resources and tasked the province to adapt and innovate our food supply chain to ensure a safe and sustainable development for years to come. Okay, so I've just been handed a note that Mark is struggling to get on, so we're going to keep moving forward and hopefully we'll get Mark here. So Brad, I'm going to pose the first question to you, and then Mary will get you to comment afterwards, and when we get Mark in, we'll engage Mark in the discussion.
Sounds good.
So, very good. So Brad, question number 1. How can today's youth be encouraged to consider careers in the agricultural sector? And what challenges are there or opportunities that could inhibit or promote any initiatives to engage young people in this way?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thanks, Mary, for that great presentation, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Mary's touched on a lot of things that will probably be reinforced as we go through the time here. But you know, I think in terms of the first part of that, in terms of the challenges, I think for youth, the first thing is actually finding out about opportunities that are available. Second is developing the skills that are necessary to be able to contribute to the challenges that we've talked about, particularly in light of the sustainable development goals that we've already seen. And how do you move from the classroom and the sort of the scientific setting, the technical setting into the field, and how do you make that particularly relevant? So that's the challenge side. On a positive note, in terms of opportunities from an adaptation, resilience, climate change, sustainability perspective, we're getting better and better, and there's a lot of different areas where youth can contribute to our understanding. Adaptation science and how we relate both technical and behavioral aspects of adaptation to agricultural challenges. There's certainly opportunities there in terms of learning more and moving as part of adaptation science. Risk management is a huge area now in terms of, again, my background is in the area of climate, things, extreme weather events, human health, biosafety, pest management, all of these sort of things have a climate nexus. And, certainly I think risk management and adaptation go hand in hand. And even when we're talking about resilience and how we not only prepare, but we respond, and then also we look at transforming both our agricultural and social systems. And finally, I'll just mention the area in passing of nature-based solutions and accounting for the natural environment. I think there, in Niagara, we have a great combination of sort of natural beauty, natural resources, as well as the agricultural sector and other aspects of the tourism industry. So, from one of your themes was ecotourism and sustainability. So I think that fits very well into here in terms of what some of the opportunities are.
Very good. Thanks, Brad. I think we very briefly had Chef Mark there, and then we lost him again. So we're going to keep working on getting him in, and maybe we'll get him in for one of the other questions. But Mary, I'll pitch it over to you. But just before I pitch it to you, thank you, Brad, for the commentary. This is a really fascinating and personal topic for me. I actually grew up on a dairy farm in central Ontario, and I thought it was a wonderful youth and a wonderful way to grow up and learn skills, a brutally hard lifestyle, and not surprising why it's so difficult to find people to continue that. But I've told many people over the years that, farming is romantic in some ways, but it is very challenging, and it lends itself to a more industrial model for sure. So Mary, maybe you can add some more commentary to Brad's comments on how do we work to point out to the youth of today that not only is this a viable way to make a living, but a critical way to contribute to society. Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
I think the t-shirt for 2020 is "You're muted." One approach we're taking is new research is showing that young people decide around grade 3 some of the key elements of their choice around the occupation and career pathway that they're going to take around grade 3. And so one of the approaches we're taking is to start small, grow something. Just grow something. Every child can grow something. It turns out that the UK says that in the last century, 40% of all food was coming from household gardens. So Dave, farming, yes, hard. Household garden, easy. These days, only about 2% of food comes from household gardens instead of 40%. With small farms, though, there's something like, 500 million farms that are less than 2 acres big. And those 500 million small farmers, those are certainly the ones mostly outside North America. They're generating 30 to 34% of the global food supply. So we're thinking small. We're thinking about giving people that control. And Dave, as you and I often talked about, taking that small garden and introducing into that things like Raspberry Pis and points of data collection, so that even at the youngest age, we can teach young children how to grow something, how to measure its growth, the factors in changing the yield and timing of growth, and then how to take what they grow to nourish themselves and their family. In our Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario, as young as 8 years old, I have seen and even videotaped young people who participate in a moose hunt, young people who are catching fish. I remember a 13-year-old who brought home 52 fish one day. It's something that we want to get back to in ensuring that at the grade 3 level, when a young person is thinking, what shall I do? How shall I bring my gifts to the community and be rewarded for them? That they understand being part of the food talent pipeline as something that's there for them.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. We'll shift to a slight variant on the question. You mentioned household gardens. I mentioned a few minutes ago the work on vertical farming and aeroponics here. And it's interesting that we're actually working on that at an industrial scale to start. But we can envision the work and the technology that we're developing getting to the point where it becomes that household garden of the future. Anybody that has a garage or a shed or some appropriate enclosure could actually do a scaled version of this at home. And we're already at the point where we can grow kale aeroponically and harvest it every 10 days from the same stem, and that stem has a virtually infinite lifespan when properly managed. Also fascinating where the technology comes together with such a traditional industry as farming when you start adding IoT, and I think we all think that's something that engages youth. No kid above the age of 5, it seems, goes around without one of these anymore, and it's really just a matter of embedding sensor technology and metrics into your garden, which is entirely doable. So we'll switch gears, and we still unfortunately haven't landed Mark with us yet. So Brad, maybe I'll pose the next question to you here, which is, what tools and resources do you feel could help promote and encourage youth participation in the agriculture and food safety sector? Now we're talking about food safety. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I think, again, Mary had touched on it as well. I think it's important to sort of, start in your own backyard, look at this idea of graduate or whatever level sort of internships, collaborative projects, opportunities to get out there and actually do important work. When you were talking earlier about some of the items with regards to education, I'll put a plug in for an organization here in Ontario. It's called ACER, which is the Association for something environmental resources. Anyway, biodiversity plots in schools, right? And then that feeds into a broader network across the Carolinian forest in southwestern Ontario to be able to monitor biodiversity. You can envision the same sort of process happening at the actual school level for food and food safety as well. And again, the one last thing, and again, I'm glad Mary touched on it as well, because it comes out of some of the comments that we had on our leadership research, is that this intergenerational knowledge sharing is extremely important in terms of being able to sort of, for youth to be able to identify opportunities, work with a mentor, think about your career trajectory more like an apprenticeship, so you can build skills along the way, and again facilitate that knowledge transfer. So I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you very much, Brad. Mary, I'll give you the chance to go off mute in case, and add to Brad's comments on that. And again, I'll read the question: what tools and resources do you feel could help promote and encourage greater youth participation in the agriculture and food safety sector?
Well, I don't mean to call a person a technology, but our teachers are the critical aspect. Teachers who are willing to let a corner of the classroom be a classroom garden. Teachers who want to make part of the schoolyard a schoolyard garden. And teachers who will use IoT technologies in the classroom to develop those process engineering skills. I think teachers are the #1 thing that are going to feed the world in the future by nourishing skills in the classroom that we can take into our lives and into our careers.
Very good. A few people associated with the event know that I am married to a grade 2 teacher, so I'm going to take that feedback home. Actually, I think that she has her kids growing beans in the classroom. That's one of the things she does every year.
So important.
Important.
I guess I will also add a quick note about something quite the opposite side of the train. The largest purchaser of food in the world is Walmart. And Dave knows I have a long association with Walmart on a very positive nature. And Walmart is doing leading work with IBM on blockchain provenance of food. So if we're going to talk about food safety in that other sense, IBM with Walmart has developed remarkable leading edge innovation, both in the protocols, policy, and technology for managing the provenance of food from that birth of a little bull calf to the steak in the freezer, and that is going to keep track of the safety of the food as it falls through the food chain.
Very good. So for the audience out there, you may not be able to detect the sort of inside baseball that's going on, but Mary is just laying it on thick here. A year ago this week, I retired after 30 years working at IBM, and I was part of that team that worked on the food safety program with Walmart. So thank you, Mary. But a remarkable set of protocols that we were able to build.
We're actually using the protocols that were developed for blockchain for provenance of food as the protocols for a number of other initiatives, because they can be translated into other domains.
Absolutely. We were able to test a scenario where there was peanut butter on the shelf, and a mock recall of peanut butter for a pathogenetic issue happened. And between the time the customer took the peanut butter off the shelf and they got to the point of sale, we implemented the recall and stopped it before the customer was able to cash out. So those are the kinds of things that technology are able to do. For those wondering, all those siren noises here, that's just outside the door that I'm sitting at, so I apologize for that. Mark, we could see you. I'm not sure if we can hear you yet. Can you hear us? Okay.
Good afternoon.
Have Mark.
Yes,
we do have Mark. Okay, great. Well, we really do want to engage you in the conversation, so maybe you'd like to spend a minute talking about the youth engagement question that we started. So you're a teacher at the Food and Wine Institute. You've got a length of experience in both agriculture and education and working with young people. So how can today's youth be encouraged to consider careers in the agricultural sector? What are your thoughts? Okay, we lost Mark again. This is really unfortunate. Okay. Brad, we're going to go back to you with question number 3, which is, how can technology be used to encourage the new emerging agricultural professional and sustain their relationship with this collaborative community in the years to come?
Right. Yeah, I think, from my perspective is sort of comes from the global framework for climate services, and how you create value and usability for data that involve climate-related data that involves decision making. So I think that some of the things that we've talked about, we're pretty good at our weather forecasts, although you may not that. We're pretty good at our global climate models and predicting out to 50 to 100 years in the future. But one of the areas in terms of applied climatology is this whole area of being able to provide some insight into what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen the next season. It's that interannual changes and being able to sort of assess what's going to happen at the local level, where we really need assistance in terms of the data is there. It's just a matter of working with it to come up with some pretty good seasonal and interannual forecasts. We talked about drones. Mary talked about drones, GIS-related LiDAR mapping, and other sort of things are emerging technologies. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned that we really excited about, a couple of our researchers at Brock, Dr. Jessica Blythe and Dr. Gary Pickering, are exploring the use of VR in terms of, in Dr. Blythe's case, looking at marine conservation and fisheries under a number of different scenarios. And some of the virtual reality scenarios that have been shared with me in that area are extremely incredible. Again, in terms of envisioning different scenarios for both agriculture, conservation, those sorts of things. And Dr. Pickering is doing the same sort of thing on the wine side, the viticulture side. So again, a lot of opportunity for emerging technology. Things have changed incredibly since we were in university, and I think that that is there are some things that are there that are extremely useful for moving forward.
Fantastic. You started about weather forecast. I can't resist. It's an accuracy, which I am totally in your court. I think the weather forecasters do a tremendous job, especially compared to even 20 years ago. I'm not ashamed to admit I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops today, and it's the 7th of November. The forecaster said it would be 20 degrees Celsius, which for those out there is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is a beautiful fall day here today, and they nailed it. So I'm really
here in Mississauga, those temperatures, we had to go back to the 30s to get those sorts of temperatures for the past couple of days.
I appreciate their accuracy because I left in shorts and t-shirt from the house this morning before it got anywhere near this warm, so which is great. And I also want to put a pitch in for some of the work that Brad's done in recent years. We talked about it in his bio about the shoreline rehabilitation work. And, Brad, I think we can get out to the audience the pitch deck or the presentation that was released a month or so ago that shows the transition of the Lake Ontario shoreline over the decades. Fascinating work.
That'd be great. Our master student, Meredith DeCock-Caspel, she's done an incredible job with the story map. Looking at Brock, we've got an incredible range of aerial photographs that go back to the 1930s. Again, that predate the one that all of the planning that happens around the Great Lakes was Hurricane Hazel, and a lot of the flood-related work has happened, and that was in the 50s. So she was able to go back before that and monitor the shoreline right up till 2018 and look at the changes over time. So yeah, that would be great because there's a lot of stuff happening not only on Lake Ontario but Lake Erie and Lake Huron and other places in the Great Lakes.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we get the link to that work out to the audience so they can see it.
Thanks. You probably hear the dog. I'll put myself on mute now.
Very good. So Mary, we're going to pitch that last question over to you now, which is, and I'll read it again for you. How can technology be used to encourage the new emerging agricultural professional and sustain their relationship with this collaborative community in the years to come?
And that is a technology plus policy answer, I think. We need to marry the two together. So we need to educate our politicians and get our lobbyists to work. And that is, to me, one of the most interesting things is carbon sequestration. So carbon is widely considered to be the reason for climate change. Carbon sequestration is a critical issue in trying to slow down the things that we're seeing happen. And currently, we do have legislation in place that pays oil industry $20 to $50 per ton, metric ton, for sequestration of carbon. Well, right now, the average farm soil is sequestering about 1% carbon that in the early 1900s was sequestering around 3% carbon. The reason soil is the most wonderful way that we could go after sequestering carbon and reducing some of the impact of what we're putting into the air. The farming methods that would help soil to sequester more carbon are eminently doable by even the smallest farmer. And there are a lot of the same things that we talk about when we talk about going back to a more organic farming style. There are many ways in little places like Stripe, payment processing, Microsoft, other players are looking at buying carbon sequestration and paying for it. But the government could just extend the policies that they are already providing to oil producers to pay farmers for carbon sequestration, which farmers can do by taking on more natural farming processes, and then using technology to measure the impact of the soil storage of carbon. In Tennessee, we have a study that suggests that the average small farm that's currently earning about $15,000 a year for that farmer could double the farmer's income. And the difference between $15,000 and $30,000 is quite a difference in living wage. Also, though, these methodologies last on forever. And that's what I was referencing in my presentation about creating essentially pension plan funding to create a continuous source of income for that farmer as we continuously reap the benefits of their farming methods, creating a carbon sequestration sponge in the soil of their farms. Yeah, I was skipping like really lightly like a dragonfly above a pond in trying to talk about a big, heavy-duty issue. But the bottom line is we should pay our farmers for the work that they do to farm more smartly and save more carbon in their soil. Oh, Dave, I think you're muted, are you?
I was muted. I was just waiting for you to finish. Through wonders of all kinds of technology, we kept losing Mark, but I've got Mark on my cell phone here. And we're going to try to get Mark to give his thoughts through my cell phone, through my computer. So, Mark, you're there. And I'll ask you to give your thoughts. You've seen the questions in advance, but maybe we can get, in particular, your thoughts on the topics of youth engagement in the agricultural industry. So, give it a shot.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mary. And nice to meet the panelists, obviously, online here. So first and foremost, the insight that I would obviously have comes from an educator, professional chef in the area, where I, carved out my career, but also mentored numerous young aspiring culinarians to pursue their dreams and passions that obviously has an interdependence and connectivity to the agri-food sector. Dr. Prohl's online as well, and we collaborate consistently at the college, which is very powerful in that respect. But I have a very strong focus on the notion of the stop, stay, spend model under the ecotourism concept that I think is very powerful here in Niagara, and it's showcased within the seasonality of what Niagara presents, but also creates some inherent challenges that the infrastructure to support that needs to be supported by the likes of facilities that provide the accommodation sector, the sector, the ecotourism component that provokes people to want to sort of have that trifactor aspect that sustains businesses, but obviously gains the notion of opportunities for young employees to work towards that goal. The other aspect that I think is crucial here that we need to understand, youth engagement is a very, very challenging topic. The other aspect that's a reality is that if they see the opportunity and the motivation to support a living wage mentality that provides an opportunity of a lifestyle choice that could possibly bridge the local sort of co-op model of farmers connecting with aspiring employees, I think there's a great potential to build that towards a very powerful succession plan that creative young minds can bridge the opportunity to ensure that they have a platform to showcase their skills, but also bring that skill set to the forefront. Mary spoke about food wastage of what is growing up to more than a third disposed of. I think we have an inherent challenge to look at alternative uses for that unperfect apple in a manner that says we can feed those that are facing food security issues, which is a reality. It's a reality here in Niagara. And I know that as a chef, inherently, because I work so much with local farmers, that I never barter in terms of that respect. I think that's very, very important. That farmers have worked hard, that they get a fair remuneration for the products that they're growing, but also that it's understood that that if you choose farming as a career option, and that's a very broad sector, because Mary has spoken about the interdependence of other opportunities within that sector, like engineering, robotics, the concept of whatever your skill sets relates to how you envision moving through your career, and to be able to support that, that you bridge the thought of thinking globally and acting locally, as the saying goes. My adage to students pretty consistently is farmers feed cities. Know your farmers, but consider becoming a farmer, because there's something very powerful and I think very rewarding in actually growing something that you could translate into an edible, palatable, but desirable product. I was able to pick up an apple this week from Palatine Roses called Red Love, which is a red-skinned, red-fleshed apple. And I shared that with the class on Thursday and asked them to wash the apple and bite into it and get their reaction from biting into this apple for the first time. Now, I could guarantee you not one of my students had seen that apple before. And of course, their facial reaction was unbelievable. Now, I also challenged them to say, knowing I was coming into this conversation, who would like to grow these apples? And it was amazing. More than 50% of the students put their hand up and said that would be amazing. So to reiterate Mary's notion of youth planting a garden as early as grade 3 is a very powerful platform to commence the process to say, here's an option for me, or under a level of mentorship, training, showcasing opportunity that these young children, as they mature, could pursue agriculture as a viable career path. The other thing that I would like to say, because of our connection to Niagara College, I think when we talk about food waste, we also have to think about this notion of functional ingredients as an alternative pathway to look at how we capitalize on the total food grown to be able to provide opportunities to make those ingredients into something that would be viable. We know that plant-based options are growing. The thought that we're throwing away an agricultural component because it's not meeting quality standards should prevent an opportunity to say, what's our alternative options for doing something with this product, whether that be grains, legumes, vegetables, dairy options that really sort of say, hey, here's an opportunity. And someone out there is going to have a very creative idea. And again, for lack of repeating Dr. Pearl's name, I mean, that's part of her success at the college in terms of inspiring some of these young students to look at creative options within the food sector that says, let's design and innovate a new product that could possibly come to market. I could go on for hours, but I hope that touches on a number of aspects, trying to play catch up here on my lack of connectivity. My apologies.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. I think a word that hasn't necessarily been used, but certainly has wound through all of the discussion about the requirements for the food supply chain, the requirements for food production, and the requirements for the human capital involved is resilience. It's a tough industry, but so important, and resilience in that industry is critical. I would like to thank you on behalf of the audience and the other panelists for your resilience through our technological challenges here and sticking with us. And we found a way to get you engaged, for which we're grateful. It is 10 minutes after 1 Eastern Standard Time, so we're going to wrap up on that point. Thanks again to all three of our panelists, Mary, Brad, and Mark. Thanks, Mary, for your keynote address. And especially thanks to the audience. I can see the numbers up in the top right corner. Great audience this afternoon. Thank you so much to everybody. It's not lost on me that I have been sitting in this very chair for about 2 hours without moving, and I'm sure all of our hackers are busy hacking away, but get up and go for a quick walk and get some blood flow before you get back to hacking. Good luck with the rest of the afternoon and developing your solutions, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow afternoon. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Bye now.